You are sitting on a thin strip of paper in a gown that does not close all the way, and the room is exactly 68 degrees, cold enough that you notice it on purpose. There is a poster of a human spine on one wall, a laminated flu season reminder on the other, and nothing else to look at except your own bare knees. You have already checked in, already handed over your card, already undressed, and somewhere between the front desk and this exam table, you agreed to something before you were told what it would cost. No one mentioned the price, no one asked if you wanted to know it first, and that is not an oversight. That is the room doing exactly what it was designed to do. Here is the strange part. The most expensive decision most people will make all year does not happen at a bank or a car lot or a closing table. It happens here, in a paper gown, under fluorescent light, with a stranger in a white coat standing between you and the door, and by the time you understand what any of it costs, you have already said yes to most of it. Health economists have a name for the number that starts this entire process. It is called the charge master, and it is, by design, almost fictional. Uwe Reinhardt, a health economist at Princeton who spent decades studying hospital pricing before his death in 2017, described the charge master as a list that almost nobody actually pays. Insurers negotiate it down. Government programs set their own separate rates. The only people who ever see the full sticker price are the uninsured, the confused, and, on paper, you. In 2013, journalist Stephen Brill spent a year investigating American hospital billing for a Time magazine cover story called Bitter Pill. He found a single aspirin billed at $15. He found routine blood tests billed at 10, sometimes 20 times their actual cost to run. These were not clerical errors, they were the starting price in a negotiation you were never told you were part of. That inflated number does not exist to be paid. It exists to be discounted later in a letter that makes you feel like you won something. And here is the part that rarely makes it into the conversation. That fictional chargemaster number, the one insurers barely acknowledge and negotiate away almost entirely, is frequently the exact number handed to patients who have no insurance at all to negotiate on their behalf. The list price built to be discounted becomes, for the people least able to afford it, the actual bill. The system was never hiding the number from everyone equally. Which is where the second mechanism arrives, and you already recognize it from every store that has ever crossed out a price before showing you the new one. Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman documented anchoring in 1974, and their finding was simple and durable. The first number you see changes how every number after it feels, even when you consciously know the first number was arbitrary. A hospital bill that opens at $4,000 and gets negotiated down to $900 does not feel like a $900 bill. It feels like a discount. Your insurance statement will even say so. In bold, near the top, you saved $3,100. Nobody saved anything. The $4,000 was never real to begin with, but the anchor already did its job days before you opened that envelope. Now add the room itself, because the room is not neutral. You are cold, you are undressed, you are worried even a little about what the doctor might find. Behavioral economist George Lowenstein has spent years studying what he calls visceral factors, the way physical states like pain, fear, hunger, and cold override the slow, deliberate reasoning most people use for every other financial decision in their life. His research, published across the late 1990s, found that people in a heightened physical or emotional state consistently make choices they would not make once that state passed, and then struggle to explain those choices afterward. You do not negotiate over an MRI while you are frightened about what it might reveal. You do not ask whether a test is covered while sitting half-dressed in front of someone who currently has more authority in the room than you do. The exam room was never going to be the place where you thought clearly about money. That is not an accident in the design. That is the design. That imbalance of authority is not a feeling, it is measurable. A 2012 study by Hajo Adam and Adam Galinsky, often referred to as the in-clothes cognition study, found that a white lab coat alone changed how carefully people performed a task while wearing it, and separately, changed how much competence and authority observers assigned to the person in it. You are not simply talking to a doctor, you are talking to a costume that has been shown in controlled research to make people more compliant and less inclined to push back. Every recommendation that follows, another scan, another panel, another follow-up visit, arrives wrapped in that same borrowed authority at the exact moment you are least equipped to question it. And once you have gone this far, a fourth mechanism quietly locks the door behind you. Psychologists Hal Arks and Catherine Bloomer described the sunk cost effect in 1985. Our tendency to keep investing in something simply because we have already invested in it, even when stopping would clearly cost less than continuing. You already took the afternoon off work. You already paid the copay at the front desk. You are already sitting here, undressed, having already answered the intake questions twice. Asking the doctor to pause to explain the cost before you agree to the next step feels like throwing away everything you have already spent to get here. So instead you nod and another line item gets added to a bill you still have not seen and will not see for weeks. There is a real law that exists because lawmakers eventually noticed this exact stack of mechanisms, and the scenario that finally forced their hand is almost too on the nose. You check into a hospital that your insurance card confirms is in-network. The surgeon is in-network. The building is in-network. But the anesthesiologist who treats you for 20 minutes while you are unconscious, or the radiologist who reads your scan from another building entirely, is sometimes an independent contractor who never signed a contract with your insurer at all. You never met them. You never chose them. You certainly never asked about their rates, because you could not have, and weeks later a separate bill arrives with a number no one prepared you for. In 2022, the No Surprises Act took effect across the United States specifically to close that gap, banning most surprise bills of exactly this kind, and requiring providers to give uninsured and self-pay patients a good faith cost estimate in writing before non-emergency care. It gives patients a formal right to dispute a bill that lands far above that estimate. It is real, it is federal, and it exists because this pattern became too visible and too expensive to leave alone. But it does not close every gap. Some in-network surprises still slip through. Estimates still arrive vague, late, or not at all, and the law only protects you if you know to ask for one in the first place. A year earlier, in 2021, a separate federal rule required every hospital to publish its actual negotiated prices online in a standardized format, so patients could compare costs before choosing where to go. Most hospitals now technically comply. Most of those files are enormous, poorly labeled spreadsheets never meant for an actual patient to open, let alone use while trying to plan next Tuesday's appointment. The transparency exists on paper. The room was simply redesigned to make it exhausting to use in practice, which accomplishes almost the same thing as hiding it. The room has since learned to fit inside your phone too. Urgent care apps and telehealth platforms now let you book a visit in under a minute, describe your symptoms, and get connected to a provider, all without a single price ever appearing on screen. The gown is gone, the fluorescent lighting is gone, but the sequence is identical. You agree to be seen before you are told what being seen costs, and the bill still arrives afterward, itemized in a format designed to be skimmed past rather than read. Moving the room online did not remove the mechanism. It just removed the last visual reminder that a mechanism was even there. So here's what you can actually do with all of this, starting with your next non-emergency visit. Ask the front desk, in writing, for a good faith estimate before you agree to any test or procedure. This is now a legal right under the No Surprises Act, not a favor anyone is doing you. Ask directly whether a recommended test bill separately from the visit itself and whether it is being ordered because your specific case needs it or because it is the office's default next step. Those are two different questions with two very different price tags attached. If a bill arrives that looks nothing like what you were told to expect, you can formally dispute it through the No Surprises Act's Patient-Provider Dispute Resolution process, a real government process that most people never use simply because they do not know it exists. Confirm that every single provider involved in your care is in-network, not just the facility and not just the doctor you booked with, since anesthesiologists, radiologists, and lab technicians are frequently billed separately and are exactly where the surprise usually hides. Get every price quote in writing rather than verbally, because a number spoken to you in an exam room is nearly impossible to enforce later, while a number in an email or portal message is not. And when it genuinely is not an emergency, you are allowed to say not today, get dressed, go home, and price check the visit before you ever put the gown back on. Nothing about that is rude, difficult, or unusual. It is simply the one move this particular room was never designed to expect from you. If any part of this sounded familiar, hit subscribe because the exam room is far from the only room built this way, and this channel exists to keep finding the others, one hidden system at a time. You are sitting on a thin strip of paper in a gown that does not close all the way. But this time, before anyone tells you what happens next, you already know which question to ask first.